Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Ford Ranger, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster diode wiring kit for towed vehicles. There's going to be 5 main components needed to flat tow your Ranger down the road. You're going to include the base plate, which is going to provide us with a solid connection point for our tow bar to get hooked up to. That's going to be one of the other components is the tow bar itself. And this is going to link the front of the Ranger to the back of our motorhome. You're also going to need safety cables. Now these safety cables are there for a backup connection, more or less. That way in the event of a catastrophic disconnect, the safety cables are going to keep everything connected. The other one you're going to need is diode or tow bar wiring. Now that's going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Ranger. The last one's going to include a braking system. Now the braking system is going to apply the brakes in the Ranger whenever you hit the brakes in the motorhome, and that's just going to bring you to a safe stop. The purpose of the diode wiring is to transfer the lighting functions from the back of our motorhome to the back of our Ranger. And that's not only going to help keep you safe by letting other motorists know what you're planning on doing as you're towing down the road, but it's also going to keep you legal. Now, I really like the diodes for a few different reasons. One of them being, once you have them installed, they're pretty much going to be maintenance free. You're not going to have to mess with them. All you're simply going to have to do is plug in the front of your Ranger to the back of your motorhome. Another reason being the fact that they use diodes, it's going to help keep your truck's factory wiring protected. In the event of a short or anything like that occurring on the motorhome side, you're not going to have to worry about damaging your factory wiring. Now, there is another option available, which is magnetic lighting, and I'm not too crazy about those for a couple reasons. One of them being you're going to have to set it up every time you want to flat tow. That's going to require you to drape wires along your truck, and it does take a little bit of time. And since the lights are magnetic, you're going to have to find a spot to stick them to your truck, and that can be especially tricky because we don't have a whole lot of room here where we're able to do that. So being that this is a complete kit, it's going to come with everything you need to get it completely installed and hooked up on your Ranger. It's going to give us the 6-way socket, as well as the 6 to 7-way cable that plugs in to the front of your Ranger here into that socket and runs to the 7-way at the back of your motorhome. So this kit is really designed for tow bars that have channels. And that's because the cable is going to be straight and allows you to utilize them channels and pass it through. Now, if your tow bar doesn't have channels, I would recommend picking up the kit that has the coiled cable, which more or less is the same exact thing we have here today, with the exception of that coiled cable. Now, as far as the installation goes, it is a little time consuming because there is a little bit of wiring involved, but it's really not that bad. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and hook it up together now. To begin our install, we're going to be here at the front of the truck, and the first thing that we're going to need to do is run our wiring from the front all the way to the back. Now, we're doing this at the same time as our base plate, and that's why the fascias are moved. It's a lot easier. You have a lot more room to work. If you need to find out how to get your fascia removed, you can always watch that in the video where we're installing the base plate. So I like to give myself a little bit of extra wire here at the front. That way we don't limit ourselves on the options as far as where we can mount our connector later on. But that being said, what I've done is just took our wiring and ran it up and over this bumper support and up through the driver's side here. So there's quite a big opening right here next to our horns, and that's where I passed our wiring through to get up into our engine compartment. And here's where our wire comes up into the engine compartment. Now, if you're installing a braking system, like a permanent style, which in our case we are, it's a good idea to leave a big loop here because that braking system is going to have to eventually tie into this. So this will give you that wire you need to make that install a little bit easier. But with that being said, what I've done is just secured our wiring along some factory harnesses here with some zip ties. Just right on top of the frame rail. And then I followed that factory harness down to the bottom side of our truck. Now, whenever you route this, you want to be sure to avoid any hot or moving parts. So now we're underneath the truck, and right there is where our wiring drops down along our firewall. Then I just started running it to the back, just right next to our frame rail. Again, keeping it secure with some zip ties. Then once we get to this point here where our frame rail is nice and open, what we're going to do is cut and separate just this white wire. And this side that's running to the front of the truck, we're going to peel that back a few inches, and we're going to strip back the insulation. Included ring terminal, and get that crimped on. We can take our self-tapping screw and attach it to the frame, and that'll give us that ground that we need. Now what we can do is finish running our wiring all the way to the back. Just kept following the frame rail and up along the frame rail and in between our fuel tank. And just continue straight back. And once it comes out of the back of the fuel tank, it's a little easier to see. It's going to come out right up here. Just kept following the frame rail all the way back until about this point. Now when we get to this point, what you're going to want to do is very similar to that white wire. We're just going to want to separate the green wire from the yellow and the brown. You don't want to cut the green wire, you just want to separate it. And that's because the yellow and brown is going to run up to the driver's side tail light, and the green one is going to go over to the passenger side. Well, with that being said, for now, we're just going to let these wires hang out, and we're going to go up and get our tail lights removed. So here at the back of the truck, if you lower your tailgate, that'll expose two 8mm screws. And those are going to hold our tail light in. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. Then we're going to have a couple of alignment pins about right here in this area behind our tail light. So sometimes these can be a little tricky to get removed, but if you kind of wiggle the light and pull at a diagonal direction, you should get it to pop out. Those are the tabs I was talking about. And now that we have it released, we can unplug it. You push back on that red tab, and then down on the center. You can pop the connector off. And there will be a little piece of plastic here that's kind of holding our wiring on. You can just remove that. Set the tail light off to the side for now, and repeat this same process to get the other one out. So I went ahead and tested our wiring functions, and what I found that the black wire with the white stripe, that's going to be our tail light signal, and the solid red wire, we're going to use that for our stop and turn. And it's set up the same exact way over on the passenger side. But with that being said, we don't have a ton of room to work here, so what we're going to do is peel back some of this wire loom and remove some of this tape, maybe 6 or 8 inches down. That way we have some wire to work with. So I peeled back that tape and that wire loom, give us more than enough to work with. And so what we're going to do is take that black wire with the white stripe and the red wire. We're going to cut those in half. I like to go, maybe a few inches back from the plug. Get those trimmed. We're going to strip back the insulation. going to take a blue Spade terminal, put that on over the bare wire, and crimp it down. I'm going to do the same thing for the 3 remaining ends. So here's what all of our ends look like. Now what we can do is grab our yellow and brown wire from under the truck and just fish it up into the taillight pocket. It's a pretty big opening, so it's pretty easy to get to. So pull all that slack out. And then we can kind of line up the wiring where we're going to get everything connected, cut off that extra. Just separate these 2 wires. Peel them back a little bit. Strip off that insulation. On each one. The yellow wire will get a blue Spade terminal. And as far as the brown one goes, we're going to do a little something different with this. What we're going to do is grab that extra length of white ground wire that we removed earlier and tie that into it. So here's our white wire. We dropped it through that same opening that we ran our yellow and brown wire through the bottom side of the truck. We're going to strip back this end. We're going to connect it to the brown wire. So we'll take those 2 and twist them together. Nice and tight, that way we know the connection's good. Then we're going to grab the yellow Spade terminal and crimp that on. From there we can grab our diodes. The side that has the single outpost, it's going to get connected to the side closest to our connector there. Same thing with this one. We're going to match the corresponding wires, so red will go to red, and one of them other posts. Black to black. Our new yellow wire, it's going to get connected to the diode that has the red wires hooked to it. Slide that on. And our brown and white wire, that's going to get connected to the diode that has the black wires connected to it. Now we can secure our wiring. So what I'm going to do is take one of the backing papers off of the 2-sided tape on the diodes and stick those 2 diodes together. I'm going to kind of run the rest of our factory wiring through it like that. And from there we can grab some electrical tape or some zip ties, whatever you have laying around, and bundle everything together to clean up our install look. That's what the wiring looks like once I kind of cleaned it up and secured it. We can plug it back into our tail light. Don't forget to push back in that red keeper. And we can kind of work our diodes into that tail light pocket and reinstall the tail light the opposite way that we removed it. So now underneath the truck, I went ahead and ran our white wire as well as our green wire over to the passenger side. That's the path that I took. White wire kind of just drops down over the hitch. Green wire kind of just follows along with it. Then there's some factory wiring that I just secured new wiring to. Just along right through here. And then while we were down here, went ahead and took our white and green wire and pushed it up into the tail light pocket just like we did the other side. So here's our white and green wire coming up through the taillight pocket. And once I pulled it up, I put all the connectors on, just like the other side, except with one exception. All of these wires will be using the blue Spade terminals. So I'll go ahead and plug our diodes in and show you what it looks like once we have it complete. And this is what they look like. The green wire will get attached to the diode where you plug your red wires into. And the white wire is going to get attached to the diode from where you plugged your black wires into. So I went ahead and cleaned up and secured our wiring just like the other side. Now we can just plug our connector back into the taillight and get it reinstalled. So now back here at the front of the truck, we can get our plug hooked up. So I went ahead and peeled the insulation back and twisted all of our wires here. We're going to take the rubber boot and slide that on first. Then we can grab our plug and get it hooked up. So the way this works is there's multiple set screws, and you're going to loosen them up, and our wires are going to go in there, and we can tighten them down. And each one is going to be marked. We're going to be using TM. That'll be for our tail light, so we'll put our brown wire in it. GD is ground, and our white wire will go to that. LT is left turn. We'll use our yellow wire there. And RT is right turn, and that'll be for our green wire. So go ahead and start with the tail lights. Wire will slide in. And grab your small Phillips and tighten that set screw down. I do that same thing for the remaining wires. And here's what it looks like once all of our wires are connected. Now once you have them connected, what you can do is slide on your rubber boot. And then what I like to do is take some grease or some silicone and kind of pack it in there to keep everything nice and sealed. So I went ahead and hooked up to our tester box here. But for those of you at home that don't have one of these, you could always just plug your motorhome in and do it that way. So we'll go ahead and try out our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster diode wiring kit on our 2019 Ford Ranger.